I just want to do a quick shout out, really for the importance of our sensory systems. When we play table tennis, a really obvious one that we often use would be our visual system. We also use our somatosensory system of our hands with touch and feel. But sometimes we don't realize that we can also use our auditory or our hearing system. And while it might be less involved in most of our play, there's some important sort of cues we can get from even our hearing. So, when I coach, I sometimes try to encourage people to listen to the sound of their bat ball contact. If you hit a ball straight on, you hear this kind of punctate sort of popping sound of the ball. You're not really putting a lot of spin on the ball, probably, when you hear it like that. Whereas if you hear more of a hushed brushing sound, that is a much different sound and usually occurs when you're putting some spin on the ball. And you could use those as cues to know not only what you yourself are doing when you hit the ball, but also maybe what your opponent's doing. And someone asked me about what about this big stomping action some people do when they serve? Is that to disguise the sound? And well, yeah, people can use that to disguise the sound. It's probably used maybe even more often just as a way to get the person back into position for the next shot. Because you can imagine that you're pushing off the ground very quickly so that you can get your body into ready position for the next shot. And ready position is so that you can be ready to take a backhand or a forehand. So while it might be used somewhat strategically, I guess, to disguise sound, there's other reasons for the stomp as well. So it reminds me, though, also with hearing, is there's research on hearing, and that hearing, if you start to have some declines in hearing, it's something that's correctable through hearing aids, at least in some part. I don't have any of those, but I understand it's a little annoying when you first put them in a little bit. You have to get used to them. But this could also be a factor that we can it's sort of a modifiable risk factor for effects that potentially could occur on the brain if your hearing's not so good. We have to remind ourselves sometimes that with our sensory systems, let's take hearing as an example, if the hearing's not quite good, it's not just your ears that we're talking about, but remember that that sensory signal goes to the brain. So the brain areas in the cortex and so forth that normally would receive a good signal aren't receiving as good a signal. So it's not just the hearing and the effect of not hearing so well that we would experience, but our brain health or our brains themselves are maybe receiving a slightly impoverished signal. So this is a modifiable factor in terms of our brain health in general, and something that it's not such a bad idea to get checked out with your regular checkups and so forth, because these are some things that can be helped or facilitated with maybe hearing aids or something else. So yeah, always looking out for our brain health as well as looking after our game. They sort of go hand in hand.